I'd like to welcome everyone to episode number 3 of the Not So Black and White podcast. I'm Deanna Thomas and my co-host,
Tammy.
we are here. So we just wanted to clarify, we're going to start every one of our episodes with a quiet, mindful moment. And so I have my trusty meditation bowl here. And so the purpose of our mindful moment is just to give everyone an opportunity to ground in, get present, and get ready to listen and engage with our podcast. If you're driving, please don't close your eyes. You can still participate in the mindful moment, just being with us and just being present. So we'll start our mindful moment when I ring the meditation bell or bowl, and you can close your eyes and I'll lead you through just a short little guided meditation that will end when I ring the bell. Okay, so let's go ahead and start our mindful moment. Closing your eyes. Just taking a moment here to connect with your body, maybe placing a hand on your heart. Let's go ahead and take a nice deep breath here. We'll inhale through our nose and exhale out of the mouth. Just giving ourselves this moment of peace, of quiet, and of slowness. Maybe you're in the middle of a busy day, or maybe you're relaxing and settling in. We thank you so much for being here with us, and we're excited to share our episode 3 with you today. Just gently opening your eyes if they were closed. And thank you for joining me for that mindful moment. And speaking of mindfulness, Tammy and I were talking about what does mindfulness really mean for us in our lives, in our practice? And we just wanted to share a little bit of that with you in case maybe mindfulness is something that you're not familiar with, or maybe it means something different to you, and that's okay. So Tammy, do you want to start us off and just let us know, what does mindfulness mean to you?
Sure. First of all, hi everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. So for me, mindfulness is presence of mind, of spirit. It's being aware. It's thinking. It's just knowing. It is me being there in my moments, me thinking about what I'm doing, what I'm saying, without freaking out, without worrying, without stressing about it. It is just being aware. It is just witnessing and knowing what's happening. So for me, that is what mindfulness is. Yeah.
I agree. That is what it is for me as well. I feel like maybe it would be helpful. I'll share an example in my previous life of being unmindful. So imagine, like, sometimes I would drive to work in the morning, let's say, and then I get there and it's like I can't even remember the drive, because I'm on autopilot. I'm just going. It's the same direction, the same left turn, right turn, and I just do that automatically without even really thinking about it. So to me, that is the opposite of mindfulness. And a lot of times in my previous life, I would find myself just, you're just going through the motions. You're not really, stopping to pause or reflect or be really present. It's just that kind of perpetual autopilot. I feel
Yeah,
like,
going.
right? Without, yeah, I'm just checking my email. I'm just doing this. It's this task, that one, and not, having the time to really be even aware of that. So that brings us to our topic for today, which I'm really excited because actually Tammy and I haven't chatted much about this. So this is going to be a great, natural, organic conversation. But we want to talk about mindful parenting. So, what does that mean to bring that presence, that awareness to parenting? And I'm excited for our conversation because our kids are in such different stages. So I'll
Mm-hmm.
just share my boys. I have two boys. They are 23. That's my baby. And my oldest is 27. He'll be 28 next month. So while they're always my children, they are grown men. That's what they are. So,
Yep.
and what about you, Tammy? How old are your little ones?
My little, very little ones, I have an 11-year-old who's the oldest, who thinks he's grown, an 8-year-old, and a nice and demanding 1-year-old.
Oh boy, I remember all of those stages, and it brings its own blessings and challenges, which is also the same at the stage of my kids. We still have our blessings and challenges, and it's just an interesting evolution, I guess. We'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
I'd love,
parenting never ends.
yeah, I'd love to hear from you, Tammy. What do you see as mindful parenting? Like, what are some of your, hmm, I don't know the right word in this one, I think. Like, I guess for me, like, how do you mindfully parent when your child is upset? Like, I think that is, was always a challenge for me of, you've got
Mm.
a crying toddler, or, somebody is, upset, their child is upset with their friend, whatever, or they're misbehaving in some way.
Yeah,
Bring mindfulness to that, especially if you yourself
it's
are
upset.
tired that day,
Oh
right? Or you're upset that day, or you have your own things happening.
my God.
What does that
Mm-hmm.
look like for you?
For me, a lot of times it kind of does look different because I am still, as much as I'm on this everyday journey, this evolution of mindfulness in my entire being, when it comes to parenting, it is challenging because you have other lives, other minds, other like beings that you are setting an example for, you're responsible for, you're their guide, even if you're not consciously guiding them. So for me, my sons, my boys, they play a lot of games, as with most kids these days. But what I tend to realize is that they're both extremely competitive. And
Ah,
so they will have some disagreements that become very heated. And so when I'm dealing with a demanding toddler and then hearing two boys just arguing for what's in my mind, no reason
right.
whatsoever, I
But super
naturally
important to them, right? Like this is
them exactly. So
right.
in my mind, in myself, I'm like, this makes no sense. Why are they doing this? And
Mm,
I'm getting a little irritated because you're arguing for no reason, but still, I have to pause in that split second and realize this is important to them. This, like my older son, he will get very passionate about his games. And if something wrong happens, he loses it. And I have to like calm myself down first internally because if he sees me upset or hears my tone upset, he's not going to respond to me well. He's not going to receive me trying to help him calm down because I'm not calm. So I
right.
can't calm him down. So I have to make sure that I'm okay by whether it be like behind the closed door, taking a few deep breaths while
Mm,
I'm still hearing the arguing. Then I would have to go to him, hey Rahim, what's up? Like ask him what's going on. A lot of times when he's too upset, he does not speak. He's just like nothing.
right.
He shuts down completely.
Right.
For me, a struggle is, or not a struggle, a challenge for me is working with people who shut down.
Mm,
I I prefer when you vocalize what's going on, even if you do it in like an aggressive way. I prefer to hear what's going on rather
Right.
than you just shutting down. So I still have to balance that as well. So I would basically take him aside. The first step that I do with my kids all the time, even the toddler, I bring them outside. I
Mm,
bring them in nature because I realize I don't know, but I don't think it's just a my kid thing. It helps them.
mhm,
Nature, grounding itself helps to regulate your emotions. So I'll bring them outside. If it's dark, I say, hey, you want to go look at the stars with me? Like, I just
mm,
try to distract their mind for a
right.
split second because then they're upset on this tangent, but then you just do a 360 and you distract them. In that minute, they don't remember that they're upset. You
Right.
can bring them outside, and then depending on how they're feeling, I would basically say, hey, what's going on? And usually at first I'll hear nothing. I'm like, all right, do you want to talk about it or you just want to be out here? Because we have to understand that even though our generation before, were probably taught that children should do what they're told, children should be seen
Right.
and not be heard. All of
Right.
these things, we weren't realizing that children they're their own person. They're their own little human beings, their own little spirit. And on the spiritual journey that I've been on for a little while now, I have come to understand that more and more every day. So I respect their boundaries. I start by saying, do you want to talk about it or do you just want to breathe? Like, are we going to go into it? And I create that safe space so they know they can talk about it. So for me, being mindful with my parenting is just respecting and acknowledging that these children are persons of their own. They're their own beings. Respect their boundaries. Teach them to create healthy boundaries. Teach them how to self-regulate. You're not feeling well. My 8-year-old, he's still in that phase where he does a lot of movement. And as we learn on this, spiritual journey, we learn that that's actually the way to go. Like, just move your body, man.
Right. He's doing
And
energy work right there, like
he
naturally.
is. He is. And so I have started to see that in him a lot. And so when he gets upset, I'll bring him outside. I'm like, do you want to dance? Do you want us to? I got him a football. Do you want us to play some ball? Let's just do something. And that naturally creates, like, on a scientific level, it produces those endorphins, the dopamine in the body. It lifts their spirits higher. On that spiritual, energetic level, it lifts their spirits. So, on a whole, it lifts them up. So, mindfully parenting for me is understanding that your children are people. You're raising adults. You're not raising someone to be a child in the next 10 years. They're going to be adults. So you have to first realize how to handle yourself, and then you can help them and be a better guide for them to understand their own emotions and understand how to just bring themselves back to center, how to shake off a bad feeling, how to just go outside and sit down and look at some stars or look at the trees blowing in the wind if you're too upset and you don't want to think about what's pissing you off. But always remember to just take some time, be present. Just
Right.
don't think about anything. Just be mindful in that moment. Be present in that moment. And that has helped me so much because
Mm.
I was a miserable parent like 8 years ago, 7 years ago. I was always just shouting. I was that parent. I was the parent
Mm.
that people look at, like, if you see me behind closed doors, you're like, you probably need some therapy. You need help. That was me. And now the relationship that I have with my children, it's beautiful. My kids tell me everything, and I know, and this is why we're gonna go to Deanna. You are gonna tell us some of these things. I know this only lasts for a while. I know them wanting me to be in every part of their day is temporary. I am aware. The other day, my 11-year-old came home and he tuned me out all evening. He showered,
Ah,
he did his thing, he was messaging somebody on his phone, he's there laughing.
it's
And I'm like,
starting.
what's so
Who are
funny? And he's like, nothing. And I'm like, Raheem, are we at this stage? And he's like, what stage, mom? The stage when, kids grow up and they don't want to involve their parents anymore in their lives. Are we there yet? And he's like, "Mm, I don't think so." And I'm like, okay, thank God, because I don't think I'm ready. So, Deanna, I am going to turn it over to you because there are days coming that I'm not ready for. And I think you are best equipped to share your experiences and how you traverse these changes in parenting.
Oh, it is an ongoing journey, man, for real. And there, yeah, it's so interesting because now, like, I can't even get my kids to respond to a text message sometimes. Like, weeks will go by, and I'm like, hello, are you there? Crickets, there. And what you said earlier so resonated with me. And I would say I wished I knew it sooner, but I just trust that we know things in the right timing, right? And really realizing that my children are their own beings and their own souls, and they're here for their own experience just like we are. That I feel like I didn't really deeply understand until they were almost grown. And part of that, I think, for me is I had unhealed trauma when I was parenting my kids. And my youngest has told me, oh, you were really controlling when I was young. And I was like, wow, but I really was, because I was so afraid that they would turn out like my parents, or and when I say that, I mean, I just come from a lot of drug addicts, alcoholics. I just did not want that for my kids. I didn't want to be that person. I didn't want them to be that person. So I was very much like, we are going to have this routine. You are going to go to school. You're going to do your homework. Like, this is what's going to happen. And I was a teacher. So, that's what I did all day. I'm teaching other people's kids, we got to sit in our desk. We need to do this. I was a special ed teacher, so there was a lot of flexibility there. But my youngest son shared with me in recent years, he said, sometimes when I was a kid, he's like, I felt like after school, I came home and it was still school. And he's like, I wanted a mom, not another teacher. And
Oh,
wow. And hearing that, I was like, oh, okay. Like I totally get it. And then
mm-hmm.
my perspective, of what I was doing at the time, my thought was, I am giving so much to other people's kids all day long. I need to do the same for mine.
Okay.
Right. And so, I think my intention was good, but then the way it was received, obviously, for
Right.
him, that experience was quite different. And so I am learning now, as my kids are older, of how to be mindful with them, with getting them to respond to me. That's one thing. But then also the discussions that we have. It's not easy to have your child then turn around and reflect and say what you did wrong. It's not easy, but I so appreciate it because, one, it just helps me to grow and be a better human and understand the impact that I've had on somebody. But the challenge there is, I can't go back and change it.
Right.
It's done. And so that then becomes for me a mindful spiritual practice of acceptance. I have to accept that that's where I was at that time as a parent. And now accepting when you get that feedback of just, okay, how do I then take this feedback and not seem or feel defensive about that? With my youngest son, when he had shared that with me, I start telling him, well, this is where I was coming from. Apparently that's the wrong thing to do. He was like, no. He's like, oh, now you're just making it about you. You're gonna, right. So then I'm like, no, like, it's not my intention. So again, mindful parenting at this age, it's a whole new journey. And I've had to start recently seeking out podcasts, Substack writers, people, who is talking about what it's like to parent an older child? Because the reality is they don't have to respond to me. Like, they're adults now. Like, what am I going to do? Put you on timeout? You didn't answer my text. Go sit on timeout. That can't work. So, yeah, so it's, just really for me, looking at how do I respond to them now? And another thing you said, Tami, that I still use now is you would ask when your son was, say, upset, and you said, oh, I'll ask him, do you want to talk about it? Or do you just want to sit and breathe? And what we used to call that in my teaching career is a forced choice. So you're giving them, and not forced in a negative way, it's just you're giving them two options. So they can pick from one of those.
But basically they have to pick a choice.
Right. And so, but you're empowering them by doing that, because they in that moment maybe can't think of, what do I want to do? I don't know. I'm 8 years old. I don't know. So you're giving two viable, healthy options to choose from. And I love that you kind of, well, not kind of, but for lack of a better way to put it, you give them an out. If they don't want to talk to you, that's okay. Like, you're not trying to force that.
I mean, it's hard. It is hard, because there are times when in my mind I'm losing it. I'm like, what's wrong? Like, do I need to do something? What's going on? Why do you look so sad? And I mean, I used to like go through from I was about 8 years old. This is another episode, but I experienced childhood depression from like a very early age. And looking at, I think that's a part of my unhealed trauma. Looking at them, the moment they get sad, I begin to panic. I'm like, what's going on? Am I doing something wrong? What can I do? And when they say nothing, I'm fine, I'm like, what do I do with that? What am I supposed to do? So I do try to give them an out, but to be completely honest with everyone that's listening and watching, it is challenging. It definitely is. So it's a journey, as you said.
It really is. Yeah, I have found, like, with my oldest one recently, like, I wanted to open up a dialogue with him, and I'm like, how do I do this? My God. So I'm like, how old am I? I sent him an email. How old am I?
Wow.
But it worked. It actually worked. And,
Good.
I mean, and when I say it worked, my intention was to open a dialogue. He responded, a dialogue ensued via email, and then we talked on the phone. So I'm like, oh my gosh. Right. But even at this age, it's still like trial and error, Tami. I don't know. Like, there's no rule book. And like you were saying, and I just keep coming back to this, it's remembering that they are their own
person.
Being. Right. They're their own person. They are not going to respond or react exactly the same as us. We don't want that anyway. We're not trying to create carbon copies of us. Right. Like, we don't want that. And so it's just an ongoing learning. I mean, I won't go into the details, but I was sharing with you before we started recording today. I had a nightmare last night about my youngest. But in the nightmare, he was 4 years old. And I'm sitting there going, my Lord, does it ever stop? Like, I mean, he was 4 years old 19 years ago. And here I am having this nightmare about that. And so, it's really this dance. I feel like they are always our children. Like, they are always there, always, but then as it's natural for them to evolve and grow and naturally separate from us a little bit. Like, they have to, because they have to continue to develop and figure out who are they without us, like, not, and I don't mean without us like we're not here, but in your 20s, you're trying to become an adult. And, I feel like it's very natural that, you're not going to talk to your mom maybe all the time. But then it's different, right? Different for everyone. Because I look at my husband, he's 38. Man, that man calls his mother every day. all the time. We live right here by her.
Yeah.
Right. He's talking to her all the time. So I'm like, I wonder if he did that in his 20s. Maybe not, maybe I have to
Maybe
wait.
not.
Maybe I don't know. So
Maybe not.
yeah. The other thing I just wanted to share and get your thoughts on this, and this comes back from my training as a special ed teacher around behavior of kids. We were trained, and I do think this is correct. It resonates still with me that every behavior has a function and it is a form of communication. So
Mhm.
even if your child is not speaking to you, like you
Right.
mentioned, there's a
They're
reason
communicating.
that they are communicating. They're just communicating maybe in a different way from you. So, what do you think about that since you still have young ones? When you think
Mhm.
about, every behavior having a
A
purpose,
reason. I
right?
mean,
And
I fully agree with that. I have over the past 4 or 5 years, I have come to a not so popular opinion that I've been noticing, but it's my personal belief, and I'm gonna put it one up and say it's a knowledge. I don't I don't call kids rude anymore.
Mhm,
I don't agree necessarily with calling kids rude because there's a reason for them
mm,
acting out.
mm,
There's a reason they say the things they say. There is a reason they do the things they do. There's a reason a child comes to school and hit another child who did not provoke them.
right.
There is a reason. And I found it goes back into mindful parenting. I have found that most of the times it's the parents, it's us.
Mm,
I hear people saying to their children, um, what's wrong with you?
mm,
Or why
mm,
are you like this? What's wrong with you? But if you
mm,
think about it, they're doing things that they see, they're doing things that they're hearing. When a child acts, this is a strong word I'm about to use, when a child acts like an idiot, as people like to say, are you acting like an idiot? Why are you acting like that?
mhm,
A parent who every day gets up, are you stupid? Are you an idiot? Why are you doing that? Are you an idiot? You are telling that child that they're potentially an idiot.
right,
And they will do things, not consciously either sometimes, that will reflect those
right,
things that you're calling them, that you're branding and labeling them.
right.
You have to be mindful in how you even ask kids what's going on, because a child coming and being a bully at school could be getting bullied at home. They could be seeing their parent getting bullied at home.
Right.
They could be watching movies that their parents are watching that is filled with violence. So the parents could be doing everything fine.
Right.
But the content, as our last episode, we're talking about
I was gonna say,
mindful
or they're watching news
consumption.
with their parents.
Right. The
Right.
things that they are seeing, they are learning, they are developing. And because of that, I like to tell my clients, my friends, that your mind, I think with my emotions most times, because the mind is a combination of all the noise. It's everything that you've been told. It's everything that you see. It's everything that you hear, but you're not feeling. And we were taught, oh, listen to your head, not your heart. Listen to your mind, not your feelings. But it's the opposite. Listen to your feelings, because when you're listening to everybody saying, oh, you don't have a pretty face, you're ugly, your nose is too big, your forehead is too big, you're going to grow up and believe that you're ugly. When in yourself, you know you're a beautiful person. You feel always from you were a child that you were beautiful, yet now you're believing something else. The same thing with children who act out. Thing with children who do things that are not childlike.
Right.
Um, Given there are children who purposely test limits, there are children who are purposely pushing your buttons. And that is also the way of a child. They're testing you. They're seeing how far they can go. They're checking what healthy boundaries are, because that's how they learn their boundaries and how to create boundaries. So all in all, I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I will forever say it. I don't believe in the concept of a rude child.
Right.
Children have reasons for whatever is going on with them. And as a child, they can't tell you the reason most times. they can't point it out. As a child, most times when you come off as offensive or defensive, like, why are you like that? They're going to be defensive. They're going to act out more. It's going to get worse, and it's not going to help you to get to the root of the situation to find out how you can help them. So all troubled kids can be helped and guided. It's just a matter of getting it at the right time, getting to the root, understanding for a fact that there is a reason for everything that they do. So yeah, I'm completely for that. There is a cause for whatever is going on with a child.
Right. Right. Yeah. And what, when we were trained in that behavior piece around the functions, there's not even, and I feel like this is true for adults too, there's not a whole lot of functions for behavior. Like there is, you're trying to escape or avoid because you don't want to do it, or you're trying to get something, whether, even if that's attention, I want attention, I want this, or you have some kind of sensory need in the body. Like, they're feeling dysregulated, but they don't know how to articulate that.
Right.
And for me, that's been helpful in being mindful, even outside of parenting, of just dealing with people, of like, okay, everybody's behavior has a function.
A reason.
Right. There's a reason.
A function.
Right. And so just taking that pause to kind of go, okay. And then, of course, turning that mirror on ourselves. Like, why am I doing the things that I, as a parent, or what is my intention? Like, with my children, I'm in new territory, even though, they're well into their 20s, it's still new for me. Like, it's like, you don't need me anymore in the same way that you needed me. And then it's, what does a relationship now look like? It's, it's uncharted territory, but I think that's where the mindfulness is just so helpful, because it gives me pause, to go, okay. And one thing I've done with my boys as they've gotten older, and actually I would love one day to have one of them on this podcast and listen to this episode and comment, tell us why. I would love to hear that. But there have been times, where they've got something going on and they've reached out to me, to chat. And okay, I don't want to mess this up, right? Like they're actually wanting to talk to me. Like, how do I do this right? And so I've learned, like, more questions. They don't want me, like, and I don't want to tell them how to live their life. So sometimes I've even tried the tactic of going, oh, okay, like, so do you want me to just listen, or are you asking for advice?
I love that one.
Right. That way it helps me to know, like, what did they maybe want? Maybe they didn't know what they wanted. And it's kind of back to that forced choice of, at least it gives an avenue here to open this dialogue, so that way I'm like, okay, if they just want to listen, then great. Then I can just do that. And it's like, Deanna, shut your mouth. Like, you don't have to say anything, just listen, And so that has been something I think for me has been helpful. And again, I'd love to ask my children, do you find that helpful? Like, I don't know. Like I said, I'm kind of learning.
I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, just, man. Sometimes I wish that, kids came with a parenting manual, but the reality is everyone is so different. How would that book be written? Right. And there's enough manuals out there of how to do things, but it doesn't necessarily always work for your child or for you. It's kind of, we're just making it up as we go. And the one thing I have shared with both of my children as they've gotten older, and when we've had conversations about childhood, and I don't know how they receive this, but for me, I'm just like, I just know I've always tried to do the best that I can. Like and I've told them, I said, there was never a day when you were little that I woke up and went, all right, how can I mess this kid up today? let me figure it out. Like, it was never, I have made countless mistakes. I know this, but it was never this intentional, let me screw you up today, right? Like, maybe
Never
I did.
that.
Right. Never that. But yeah. And then for me, I feel like, as the kids get older, the next journey at some point, I'm like, then there's like grandparenthood. Oh my God. What? I don't know when that is coming, but hey, like I'm already going, okay, this whole like
Mhm.
grown child thing kind of threw
Right.
me in a different way, like I don't know what I thought. Did I
It's
just think like,
completely different.
right, they're just gonna grow up and okay, now we're done and everyone's friends and life is sweet.
And
I
that's
don't
the
know.
thing, like I've been thinking, in my writing the other day, like I started by saying, I wonder what my parents think, or I wonder what my children will remember when they grow up, because I don't think my parents think I remember a lot. So I'm thinking a lot of times when it comes to being an adult, I find that we weren't prepared for certain things because I mean, even now, like I have a little sister, she is 24. She just turned 24 last week. And she is now facing what I like to call sudden adulthood syndrome. There are things as an adult that you will wake up one day and like, shit, I have to pay all the bills. I have to do this. I have to buy. Wait, no one told me this. And it's the same for parenting. Like we grew up with parents, we saw our parents, they knew we would potentially become parents. No one told us any of this crap. Like my parents used to say, oh, when you grow up, you're going to meet your match, you're going to have a child, and they're going to be just like you, and then you're going to know. Know what?
Right. What am I supposed to know? I don't know.
I don't know anything. I'm learning. Now I'm here learning about myself.
Right.
I'm learning about these little human beings. I am also, and this I think would be in like the other episode with your son or one of them. This is what I'm finding happening to me through my children and through the act of mindful parenting. I am learning and understanding things about my parents because I'm like, the thoughts that are in my head, me trying so hard, and then my son looking at me, the older one, like I'm failing miserably. I'm like, huh, my parents probably went through all of this.
Right.
Yeah. And so like I think we are now in a time of this world, basically of the Great Awakening, where we have so much information at our fingertips, where we can look for resources on the internet and find out, like through podcasts that other parents are experiencing the same things or similar things. And then we can learn, we can relate, we can share, and then we can grow. Back then they didn't have this, miss. They didn't. And so
Right.
I'm now understanding and learning to forgive certain things because they didn't know better. They weren't there yet. And I feel like that's kind of a reflection of what you're experiencing now because I have a very rocky relationship with my parents, very turbulent.
Right.
However, even though I don't really reach out to them much, I do the inner work and I reach out to them more than I used to before, but now inside I have forgiven them a whole lot for things that I was angry about. I was feeling a lot of negative emotions towards. I am learning now to let certain things go. I'm learning to forgive certain things and I'm understanding their actions more because they were coming from a place of the only thing they knew. They didn't know better, I guess. And they meant well.
Right. They probably didn't wake up every day and go, oh,
And
how can we mess up Tammy today? Right?
exactly. I don't think they did that. So I am learning. And I guess if any of them eventually watch this episode, they'll see that I am learning and understanding how to forgive and grow through certain things. So yeah. Yeah.
And
I have hope for this journey.
right. And I love that you brought that piece up of mindful parenting because, you know, the same thing has happened to me in my journey of looking back at my parents and going, oh, you know, it's the same what we talked about seeing our children as their own beings. Now, us as children seeing our parents as
As
they
their
are their
own
own
beings.
beings. Like they were people and doing their things before we ever came to existence, you know? And I think that's what I'm seeing a little bit with my children. They're kind of starting to look back and go, oh my God, my mom, maybe she's more than just my mom, right? Like, you know, if you want to put the labels on it, you know, like I'm a wife, I am a sister, I was a teacher, I'm a yoga, all these things, you know, and I was a whole leap of things before they were ever here. But then somehow, I think, is it just for all of us? I don't know that, you know, it's hard to see our parents as anything other than our
But
parents,
rarely.
right, for a long time. And so, you know, I'm always hopeful for my kids going, oh, maybe they have to have their own kids before
Yeah,
they
probably.
see it. I don't know, you know. And then if that's what really needs to happen, does what happens to like people who decide never to have kids? You
Okay.
know, it's
I
like they
mean, I
don't
think
have, is that different? I don't know.
at some point they probably do like see it maybe through friends who have kids. Maybe, you know, sometimes we're watching a movie and an epiphany just, and you're
Right,
like, oh. So
right,
I feel like divine intelligence, God, the universe has a way of, in the right time, in the perfect time, of allowing certain information to come through us so that we can have certain levels of clarity, so that we can get what we like to call downloads. But it happens one way or the other. You'll be reading a book, watching a movie, on a bus, and hearing a conversation. Something will happen. We're in the right time, or children, us, or parents,
right,
everyone will get the information that we need to move to another level. So I
right,
have faith, even if
right,
they decide not to have kids, they will
right,
understand. And the fact is, you, me, we're learning as we grow, and being mindful, we make actionable steps. We Tomorrow is better than today, basically, because
right.
we're mindful in today, and we get those lessons, we learn to accept certain things, and we move forward and higher as a better version of ourselves. So that will be evident, it will be clear, and they'll be able to see it. And through that, we can all grow.
Right. Yeah, man. I agree with that for sure. So, as we close our episode for today, let's just take a little pause and think about what are the key points that we want our listeners to walk away from with this conversation today around mindful parenting. If they remember nothing, what do we want the one thing that they remember? Hmm. I have to think
I
about that
mean,
for a second. What do you think?
for me, I feel like my one takeaway would be, remember that your kids are their own human beings. They
Yep.
are individuals. They are people who will grow up to have their own emotions, their own thoughts. And
Right.
so let's not try to create in them a replica of ourselves. Let us not try to make them a copycat version of us or the childhood that we didn't get to live. Try to learn who our children are in this moment, who they want to be, and how we can be better guides to them. So I feel like for me, mindful parenting, that's the most important thing. Learn how in every moment we can be a better guide to our kids.
Right. Yeah, man. I would say the same thing. So I guess just to add a different point for people to take away is that remembering that behaviors have a purpose and a function, you know, so a child is not necessarily just trying to irritate you, you know, if they are, maybe they need some attention and that's the way they're looking for it, you know, but just to really kind of, I guess, separate their behavior from taking it personally, you know, of looking at them, like you said, they are their own being, and then looking at that behavior as what are they actually trying to communicate to me in
Mhm.
that moment? even if that behavior is not appropriate or how we would prefer them to do that. It's that, okay, what are they trying to communicate? And then how can we teach them a more appropriate way to respond in the appropriate time? Because like you had mentioned with your son, like if he's really upset, that's not the teachable moment. You have to help them to get calmed down first, right? Whatever that looks like. And then, we can turn that back on ourselves. We need to be calm, as much as possible. But also, it's the understanding that we're human and we are going to make mistakes. It doesn't make us terrible parents, it makes us human. But we can bring the mindfulness into how do we then try to repair, if we've had an outburst ourselves or what have you, right? So yeah, man, just remembering that our children are their own beings, their behavior has a function, they are trying to communicate with us in one form or another, and how can we use that, like you said, Tami, and I love this, to be a better guide for them, and I don't think the guiding ever stops. I think it just changes and what right and I'm still learning what does that look like when they are older. So just being mindful and trying to navigate from a place of love and compassion, right, for them and for us. It's not easy, right? All right, well, let's close our episode with a mindful moment. So I've got my meditation bowl here again for your driving out there. You're not going to close your eyes. For the rest of us, if you would please indulge yourself and give your eyes a close and a break. Let's just take a moment here to allow this beautiful conversation that we just had to resonate in our bodies, mind, and spirit. Taking a nice deep breath here, inhaling through the nose and a nice long exhale out of the mouth. Just giving yourself a peaceful moment here at the close of episode number 3 of the Not So Black and White podcast. Just opening your eyes slowly. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tami. I so love hearing about your journey with your little ones. And there's still a part of me that goes, man, like if I could do it over again, this is what I would do. So just taking what you're sharing and how can I apply that to where I'm at in my journey. And yeah, man, thank you.
You are most welcome. And I mean, I am learning as we go from you, because I still get nervous sometimes thinking about my kids growing up and I'm like, what's next? But as we grow, I realize that we are all, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Simple.
And I would just like to close too with something you mentioned earlier about the importance of community, right? It's finding people that you can talk to that are going through maybe the same parenting stage that you are, then as well as someone who's in the next stage, right? So you can have that. So for me, my next stage, I'm going to be looking for grandmas. Man, like, all right, it's like, well, I want to get ready for when that part comes. So yeah, man. Well, thank you. And thank you to our listeners. Please comment, give us your feedback. Oh, that's what we're going to say really quick too, that we did get some good comments and feedbacks from our first episode. And so please know, man, that we really take that feedback and we try to improve and do better and make our podcast something that's even more relatable and enjoyable for you guys. So do not hesitate. We take all feedback, constructive criticism, compliments, all the things.
We do. And, remember, if you watch this video, this episode, you listen to this episode, you liked it, or there is something that you learned from it, feel free to comment so other people can know that, they're being related to. We
Right.
can actually know that we are reaching you in an impactful way. If
Yeah.
it is that you think someone can benefit from this episode, please share. Sharing is definitely caring.
Yes, it is.
And yes, it is. And this is a community of soulful living that we are growing as we go and going as we grow. So, looking forward to seeing you or talking with you in our next episode, episode 4, which will be ready next week after you watch this episode.
All right. So now we're officially closing for real. Thanks. All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye.